The Hundred Years' War, a conflict spanning generations, leaving a mark on England and France. Why did it last so long? What drove this epic clash? It was more than battles. A struggle for dominance and national identity, a pivotal period in European history, shaping two powerful nations, marked by intense warfare and fragile truces, a relentless back and forth, not just fought on battlefields. It was a war for hearts and minds, seeping into society. The war's impact resonated beyond the battlefield, spurring technological advancements, changing European armies, the longbow, a game-changer, securing English victories. Castles became vulnerable, strategists adapted, rethinking tactics. Not just a clash of armies, a clash of cultures and identities, shaping destinies for centuries, leaving a legacy of rivalry and shared history. A pivotal chapter in Europe's story, filled with ambition, bloodshed, and resilience. To grasp the complexities of the Hundred Years' War, we must delve into the events that preceded it. The seeds of this conflict were sown long before the first arrow was loosed, rooted in territorial disputes and dynastic rivalries. English kings, descended from William the Conqueror, held vast territories in France. The French kings, from the Capetian dynasty, sought to consolidate their power. When the last Capetian king died without a male heir, Edward III of England claimed the French crown. This ignited tensions into a full-blown war that would consume both nations for generations. To understand the roots of the Hundred Years' War, we must journey back to the 12th century, to the reign of Henry II of England. Henry inherited vast territories in France through his marriage to Eleanor of Aquitaine. This union created the Angevin Empire, making Henry a powerful landholder. The French kings viewed the Angevin presence with suspicion and resentment. They yearned to reclaim these lands and forge a unified kingdom. The Angevin kings were determined to maintain their grip on their continental possessions. The English crown invested heavily in fortifying its French holdings. It was only a matter of time before tensions would boil over into open warfare. The death of Henry II in 1189 marked the beginning of a turbulent period for the Angevin Empire. His sons, Richard the Lionheart and John, proved to be less astute rulers than their father. Their reigns marked by costly crusades, internal rebellions, and ultimately a dramatic loss of territory in France. Philip II, a shrewd and ambitious French king, took full advantage of the Angevin turmoil. He skillfully exploited the divisions within the Angevin family, playing the brothers against each other and chipping away at their continental holdings. In a decisive victory in 1204, Philip II seized control of Normandy, the ancestral homeland of the English kings, delivering a crushing blow to the Angevin Empire. The loss of Normandy was a watershed moment in Anglo-French relations. It marked the end of the Angevin Empire as a dominant force in France and ignited a deep sense of resentment and humiliation within the English crown. The English kings, clinging to the remnants of their French possessions, vowed to reclaim their lost lands, setting the stage for centuries of future conflict. The struggle for power in France was not merely a territorial dispute, it was a clash of two powerful dynasties, each with its own ambitions and grievances. The Capetian kings, emboldened by their successes, were determined to consolidate their rule and create a unified French kingdom. The decades leading up to the Hundred Years' War were marked by escalating tensions. The English kings remained a potent force in France. They controlled Gascony and claimed the French throne. This English presence was a thorn in the side of the French kings. The French viewed English holdings as a challenge to their authority. They sought to weaken the English grip on Gascony. The English deeply resented these French attempts. They saw Gascony as vital to their interests. The English crown sought to expand their influence in Flanders. Adding fuel to the fire was the issue of the French succession. In 1328, Charles IV of France died without a male heir. Edward III saw an opportunity to press his claim to the French throne. The French passed over Edward's claim in favor of Philip VI. This decision infuriated Edward III and set the stage for the Hundred Years' War. The seeds of conflict had finally borne their bitter fruit. The stage was set for a prolonged and bloody struggle between two powerful nations. The death of Charles IV of France in 1328 without a male heir plunged the kingdom into a succession crisis. Edward III of England saw a golden opportunity to press his claim to the French throne. The French resisted the idea of an English king on their throne. They clung to the Salic law, barring women and their descendants from inheriting the throne. The French nobility rallied around Philip of Valois, a cousin of Charles IV. Philip VI was crowned, shutting the door on Edward's ambitions. The years following Philip VI's coronation were marked by uneasy peace, masking tensions between England and France. Edward III never abandoned his claim to the French throne. He built up his military strength, forging alliances with French nobles. Philip VI, aware of the threat, took steps to consolidate his power. He undermined English influence in Flanders and imposed restrictions on English merchants. Disputes over Gascony added fuel to the fire. Philip supported Gascon nobles against English rule. These skirmishes escalated tensions. By the early 1330s, peace was unraveling. Edward III declared war in 1337, beginning the 100 Years' War. The 100 Years' War began with naval battles and skirmishes along the French coast. Edward III used England's naval power to disrupt French commerce. Philip VI fortified coastal cities and prepared to repel invasions. Early years were inconclusive, with minor victories on both sides. In 1340, Edward III's fleet decisively defeated the French at the Battle of Sluys. This victory shattered French dominance in the English Channel. The Battle of Crécy, fought on August 26, 1346, marked a turning point in the 100 Years' War. It shattered the myth of French military invincibility and showcased the devastating effectiveness of the English longbow. Edward III had positioned his army on a strategically advantageous hillside. As the French knights advanced, they were met with a hail of arrows. The English longbow proved devastatingly effective against the French cavalry. The English longbow, a simple yet deadly weapon, played a pivotal role in securing the English victory at Crécy. Crafted from yew wood, it could propel an arrow over 200 yards with deadly accuracy. In skilled hands, it could pierce even the thickest armor. English longbowmen, trained from a young age, were renowned for their skill and discipline. They could loose arrows with incredible speed and accuracy. At Crécy, their disciplined volleys broke the French charges. The Battle of Crécy was a resounding English victory, marking a turning point in the 100 Years' War. The French army, despite its numerical superiority, had been routed by the deadly efficiency of the English longbow. The English victory at Crécy had far-reaching consequences. It solidified Edward III's position in France, giving him control of key ports and territories. The battle also had a profound impact on military tactics and technology. Crécy marked the emergence of England as a major military power on the European stage. As the 100 Years' War raged, a new enemy emerged: the Black Death. This pandemic, carried by fleas on rats, swept across Europe, leaving unimaginable death. The bubonic plague spread rapidly through urban centers and rural communities. Symptoms included painful swellings, fever, and often swift death. The plague arrived in England in 1348, brought by ships from the continent. London, a bustling metropolis, was particularly hard hit. France, too, was ravaged by the Black Death. Hospitals overflowed and mass graves were dug for the dead. The Black Death's impact on both England and France was nothing short of catastrophic. Within a few short years, the plague had killed an estimated 1/3 to 1/2 of the population of both nations. The sheer scale of death was staggering, decimating families, villages, and entire communities. The plague's impact extended far beyond the immediate death toll. It triggered widespread social and economic upheaval, disrupting trade, agriculture, and the very fabric of medieval society. With so many dead, labor shortages crippled agriculture, leading to food shortages and skyrocketing prices. Trade, already disrupted by the war, ground to a halt in many areas as fear of contagion kept merchants and travelers at bay. The Black Death also had a profound psychological impact on both nations. The seemingly indiscriminate nature of the disease, striking down rich and poor alike, led to widespread fear and despair. Religious piety intensified as people sought solace and explanations in the face of unimaginable suffering. Some turned to extreme forms of penance, flagellating themselves in a desperate attempt to appease God's wrath. The plague's impact on the 100 Years' War was complex and multifaceted. In the short term, the war ground to a halt as both England and France struggled to cope with the pandemic's devastating effects. Armies were disbanded, campaigns postponed, and truces declared as both sides grappled with the overwhelming crisis. The Black Death temporarily halted the Hundred Years' War but did not extinguish tensions between England and France. The conflict re-emerged with renewed ferocity after the plague's devastation. The massive loss of life had significant military and economic implications. Armies were now depleted, forcing reliance on smaller professional forces. The plague disrupted trade and agriculture, straining financial resources. It also led to social unrest and challenges to the established order. In England, the aftermath saw the rise of Parliament as a powerful force. In France, the plague exacerbated social tensions and weakened the monarchy. The Hundred Years' War was now fought in the shadow of a devastating pandemic. By the early 15th century, France found itself teetering on the brink of collapse. The Hundred Years' War, now spanning generations, had taken a devastating toll on the kingdom. The English, emboldened by a series of victories, occupied vast swathes of French territory, their grip on power seemingly unbreakable. The French army, once a formidable force, had been decimated by repeated defeats, its ranks depleted by casualties and desertions. The French nobility, riven by internal divisions and weakened by the loss of their lands and prestige, seemed incapable of mounting an effective resistance. The once proud French monarchy, its authority shattered, teetered precariously close to collapse. The French people, burdened by heavy taxes, ravaged by war, and demoralized by seemingly endless defeats, had lost faith in their leaders and their ability to repel the English invaders. The spirit of resistance, once strong, had dwindled to a flicker, threatened with extinction by the overwhelming despair that had settled over the kingdom. France, once a land of prosperity and cultural brilliance, was now a shadow of its former self. Its fields lay fallow, its cities impoverished, its people ground down by war and despair. The English, their grip on power tightening, seemed poised to deliver the final blow, to extinguish the French monarchy and absorb the kingdom into their own burgeoning empire. Amidst the despair and darkness that enveloped France, a glimmer of hope emerged from an unexpected source. In Domremy, a young peasant girl named Joan began to experience extraordinary visions. She claimed these visions were sent by God, carrying a message of hope. Joan spent hours in prayer, seeking solace and guidance. She saw and heard celestial beings who spoke of her divine mission to save France. Driven by faith, Joan embarked on a journey that would change history. Joan's journey to Chinon was fraught with danger and uncertainty. Clad in men's clothing, she traveled through enemy-held territory, braving the perils of war. Her arrival at Chinon in February 1429 was met with curiosity and apprehension. The Dauphin was initially skeptical of Joan's claims. Joan's conviction and knowledge eventually persuaded Charles to grant her request. Joan, now the Maid of Orléans, was provided with armor, a sword, and a banner. She quickly rallied the demoralized French troops, inspiring a renewed sense of purpose. Under Joan's leadership, the French army marched towards Orléans, a turning point in the war. The siege of Orléans, which had begun in October 1428, had dragged on for months, draining French resources and morale. The English, under the command of the Earl of Salisbury, had surrounded the city, their cannons bombarding its walls and their troops poised to starve the inhabitants into submission. Joan's arrival in Orléans on April 29, 1429, was a turning point in the siege. Her presence, her unwavering faith, and her bold pronouncements of divine favor galvanized the French defenders and instilled fear in the hearts of the English. She rallied the French troops, leading them in a series of daring assaults against the English fortifications. Joan, though lacking formal military training, possessed a natural instinct for strategy and tactics. She inspired the French troops with her courage, often fighting alongside them on the front lines, her banner held high as a beacon of hope. Her presence seemed to invigorate the French, while the English, demoralized by her seemingly supernatural abilities and the renewed vigor of their opponents, began to doubt their own invincibility. On May 8, 1429, after a series of fierce engagements, the French, led by Joan of Arc, achieved a decisive victory, lifting the siege of Orléans and driving the English back. The victory at Orléans, a stunning reversal of fortune, marked a turning point in the Hundred Years' War. shifting the momentum in favor of the French and establishing Joan of Arc as a national heroine. The Hundred Years' War, a conflict marked by periods of intense fighting and fragile truces, finally drew to a close in the latter half of the 15th century. The Treaty of Picquigny, signed in 1475 between Edward IV of England and Louis XI of France, formally ended hostilities and ushered in a new era in Anglo-French relations. The treaty, a testament to the exhaustion and shifting priorities of both nations, reflected the changing political landscape of Europe. England, weakened by internal divisions and the loss of its French territories, was ready to relinquish its claim to the French throne and focus on domestic matters. Louis XI, a shrewd and pragmatic ruler, was eager to secure his kingdom's borders and consolidate his power after decades of conflict. Under the terms of the treaty, England formally renounced its claim to the French throne, effectively ending the centuries-old dispute that had fueled the war. England also agreed to withdraw from its remaining territories in France, including Calais, a strategic port city that had been under English control for over 2 centuries. The Treaty of Picquigny marked a turning point in Anglo-French relations. While rivalry and mistrust would linger for centuries, the treaty laid the groundwork for a more peaceful coexistence between the two nations. It allowed both countries to focus on their own internal development, ushering in a new era of exploration, renaissance and reformation that would shape the course of European history. The Hundred Years' War, concluded with the Treaty of Picquigny, left an indelible mark on England and France. In England, it fostered national unity and strengthened Parliament. The longbow became a symbol of English military prowess. Naval power proved crucial for England. In France, the war devastated the kingdom but fostered national unity. It paved the way for a more centralized and powerful monarchy. The Hundred Years' War prompts counterfactual questions. What if the English had prevailed at Agincourt? What if Joan of Arc had not been captured? England and France might have united under a single crown. Cultural differences could have led to internal divisions. If the French monarchy collapsed, France might have descended into chaos. The Hundred Years' War continues to fascinate and inspire debate. It reminds us of the enduring power of national identity and the unpredictability of war.